Hey guys, welcome to the One Fun Guy podcast. I'm going to be live with Matt in about a minute. I'm going to wait till he hops on. I'll bring him on, and then we'll start the live show, guys. So just bear with us a few minutes. He is not going to be with me in studio tonight. He is going to be joining me virtually. So while that's happening, I'll wait for him to pop on. He'll come on, and we'll add him on, and we will get the show started. So just bear with us for a minute or so. And I know we're a little bit early. I said 7, but I think it's going to be easier to do it when Matt's here. So, hey, Kim, what's going on? So as soon as Matt pops on, I'll bring him on the camera. We'll do the split screen, and we will be live. So I'm super excited. Matt is awesome. I've known him for 25 years now, so it's going to be a fun show. An hour is going to go by super quick, so I'm super excited. If you guys haven't saw, I just got off a podcast with Mark and Joe on the Insane Asylum. That was super, super awesome. Crazy, busy, weird day. So I guess that's a good day, right? So it wasn't a bad day, so I'm assuming that's positive side here is good. Hopefully that is the case. Hold on a second. Let me see if I could bring Matt on camera here. Give me 1 second. Matt, if you're on, ask to be on camera, and then I'll bring you on. So while we're doing this, guys, I got some super exciting news tonight, which is awesome. It's the first time, hey, Crystal, my podcast is actually being sponsored. Hold on, Matt wants to join your video. Give me a second. Going to accept, and we're going to add. In it, Matt should hop on. Hopefully. We did the trial one. Hey, what's up, buddy?
How's it going?
You made it.
Yeah, I tried to do it with my tablet because I feel like the camera is better, but
No,
we'll do the phone.
I'm going to bring it up so my head's not cut off here. But yeah, so as I was saying, guys, I'm super excited tonight. The podcast is being sponsored by the Clubhouse. So Crystal gave me this amber to wear, which I'm super stoked. So if you want one yourself or you're interested in checking out her stuff, it's www.shoptheclubhs.com. So head over there, get yourself an amber, get yourself some clothing. Crystal has a boutique, so she was awesome enough to sponsor the show tonight. So thank you, Crystal, for doing that. So my guest tonight is Matt Thayer. Me and Matt have been friends, like I said, for about 25 years now. So we're going to have an awesome show tonight. If you like what we're doing, guys, if you could like and follow and share my show, that would be great. I try to do it from my phone, and I want to pay more attention to Matt than I do about sharing my show to having another way to go. So I'm not going to pay attention to my phone and try and share to the groups. If you guys can do that for me, that would be awesome. If you can just give us a like and a follow and a share, that would be great. But other than that, we're going to jump right into it, guys, because this hour is going to fly by with Matt. So, Matt, tell us a little about yourself. Like I said, go into as much detail as you want, and we'll go from there. It'll be a fun show.
All right. My name is Matt Thayer. I was born in Chicago, grew up in Streamwood. For those of you who aren't familiar with that area, it's kind of by O'Hare Airport. It's by Woodfield Mall, a big popular mall in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. And I went to Hoffman Estates High School. I played football, played water polo, and I swam. I wasn't as big as I am now. And then I actually swam in college. I swam for a year, and then I decided that having fun was more important than competing at that point. I wasn't going to go into or anything. So
Right. I hear you.
I went to Carthage up in Kenosha. We were really impressed with how gorgeous the campus was, and it's right on the lake. And yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time. I was thinking physical therapy. I was thinking maybe being a teacher. I hadn't made up my mind yet. But then I met you second semester of freshman year, pledged together. Marco and I are both Phi Caps. Yeah, that was great. And then I went into athletic training. So a little background, my dad was an athletic trainer in the NHL for, I think, 28 years. My older brother was in the NHL for a couple of years as an assistant athletic trainer. My dad was with the Blackhawks, the Penguins, and the Lightning. My brother was with the Ducks in Anaheim. And so I just kind of felt like I would follow in their footsteps. And so I got my degree in health science. And then I went, and when we graduated in '02, I remember I left like the day of graduation. I had to go out to Pennsylvania to start grad school like 3 days later.
Yeah.
I wanted to do the accelerated program. I had no desire to be in school any longer than I had to at that point. So I got my master's in about 11 months, and I got my master's in health science. And then I came home and started working at Abbott as a temp, and lived with some of our fraternity brothers for a couple months. That was a lot of fun. It was a fun time. And then I actually got an interview with the New York Mets. And it was funny because I had my older brother told me, he was like, hey, the Mets have a couple job openings. And I was like, get out of here. And he was like, yeah. He's like, you should interview. And I was like, you think I have a shot? And he was like, they're looking for like, young trainers right out of school, like, maybe a little experience. But he's like, give it a try. What can it hurt? So I had 2 phone interviews, and a couple weeks went by and I hadn't heard anything. And I was working at Abbott, and I told one of my coworkers who was a big Cubs fan, I was like, hey man, I interviewed with the Mets today. And then a couple weeks go by and nothing. And actually that day at lunch, he was like, nothing from the Mets. And I was like, no, I guess I didn't get the job. And my desk, my phone rings, and it was from a 772 area code. And I think it's 772, maybe 727, whatever it is. But I looked at my phone. I was like, that's Florida. And I answered it, and it was the athletic training minor league director. And he was like, yeah, can you be here on Saturday? And it was a Tuesday. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can be there on Saturday. And so I had to go home and tell my girlfriend, Amy, who's now my wife, tell her that I'm moving to Florida for 8 months. But yeah, anyway, so I was with the Mets for 5 years. And then, it's a fun job. We had a lot of cool experiences, saw so much of the country I never would have seen. I even traveled a little bit. I got to go to the Dominican Republic for that's just short of a month. It was in November of 2008, and Amy and I had just built a house in Zion. And so back then, I didn't have a fancy cell phone with international calling, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I had to use the phone, or the computer phone, the VoIP, whatever. And so I was talking to her on the computer, and we were doing the AOL Instant Messenger, AIM, I guess. But yeah, so then she was just like, we built this big house and you're always gone. And she's like, would you just find a job where you can stay at home? And I was like, yeah, I've had my fun. This is a cool job, but it's not really conducive to family life. So yeah, I ended up getting a job full-time at Abbott then after that. And I worked there for about 5 years. And then I got a job at Tetra Pak, where I currently am now. I'm a project coordinator. It's just a desk job, it's pays the bills. It's cool enough. I've worked with a lot of great people. It's not so much the job that I enjoy; it's the people I work with.
Sure,
but,
yeah. That's the big thing. It's like that everywhere.
Yeah, it's true. It really, people say, they don't quit jobs; they quit managers.
Yeah.
I've had 3 managers since I started there about 10 years ago, and they've all been wonderful. So I have no complaints. But I've been pretty lucky. I grew up, I had grandparents in Maine. That's where my dad is from. So we would go out there over the summers. My dad working in hockey, he'd be off, in the summers. So usually he'd come out to Chicago and pick me up. My parents got divorced when I was young, but Dad would come out and pick me up. And then we'd go out to Pittsburgh for a little while, and then we'd go to Maine for a few weeks and see my grandma and grandpa. And then usually we'd come home like end of July, and then we'd go to my mom's parents who lived in California, and we'd fly out there for 2 weeks, and we'd always go out there for Mom's birthday at the beginning of August. So it was always fun to be in California in August, like, prime time for just sitting in the sun and doing nothing on summer break. I'd always get like a new CD or two before the trip, because like a 4-hour plane ride and a couple books to go through. But yeah, I had a lot of fun times traveling as a kid, like always, from East Coast to the West Coast. And yeah, and after, like I said, we built a house in Zion in '08, and then we lived there until 2 years ago. We just moved to Kenosha, Wisconsin, in November of 2022. So we're loving it up here. We love this area. A lot of great people. We have right off the bat, as soon as we moved in. Like I said, it was November,
Sure.
and we made Christmas cards with pictures of us and the kids. So, kind of introducing ourselves to our neighbors. And, in the middle of winter in Wisconsin, it's freezing cold. There's, snow on the ground, ice on the ground. So you don't see a whole lot of your neighbors until like springtime. But we went around and put these Christmas cards in people's doors, and we said, hey, we're your new neighbors, and we gave them our address, and we said, just, looking forward to meeting you someday. And yeah, as it got nicer outside, more and more people were outside, we ended up meeting our neighbors. And I love this area, and the girls are, I mean, we see the kids' school, so
Yeah, exactly.
I was never a walker. I always took the bus as a kid, so it's cool that they're close enough to walk.
Yeah. Awesome. So it was super hard to not tell everybody what you did, because everyone was asking, like, tell us about Matt, tell us what he does, what. So like when I have guests on the show, it's hard to like tell them that, because I want you to tell them.
Okay.
Like it's your story. So everyone's asking me, like, what does Matt do? What's so awesome about him? What makes him so exciting? And I'm like, just wait until the show. He will tell you, because I don't want to give it away. So it was difficult to not say anything. I could talk all day long about your character and but like I think we're gonna hit on it. You touched it earlier, working for the Mets, right? Because that's a cool experience, and not many people can say they've been around professional athletes and that Hall of Famers that you've worked with, and the people that you've seen and talked to. So Matt gave a great introduction. I met Matt when we were freshmen in college. We pledged together. We were fraternity brothers together. We roomed together. We always lived on the same floor. We pretty much did everything together.
Yeah.
Wherever I was, he was. Wherever he was, I was. So we were pretty much inseparable in school. But his story post-graduation is awesome, because I remember I was a huge Mike Piazza fan. And so the first thing I asked him, I'm like, dude, do you see Mike Piazza? Can you get me like a ball? He's like, well, Mike kind of stays to himself. He doesn't really like come around very much. I'm like, if you happen to see him, I was like, can you do that for me? So he's like, well, I can do something cool for you. And I'm like, what do you got? He goes, you like Oakley's, right? I said, I love Oakley's. That was kind of my name brand. He's like, all right. He's like, keep your eye open for something in the mail in a couple of weeks. He got me the Mets Oakley's, the silver ones with the blue O with the blue flame. Yeah. So it was awesome, because like, I mean, I still have the Savannah Sandat hat that you sent me.
Yeah.
But that story, and I'll let him tell it, but the introduction to what he did in professional sports is awesome, because I mean, I have a lot of friends, and they've all met celebrities and they've all met athletes, and we've all kind of had our moments with them, but like Matt lived it. So let's just head into that. Like, tell us about that experience, like from the time you got the call till you ended up in Florida, training with the big leaguers, staying in Florida, going to Georgia. Tell us all about it.
Okay. So yeah, I got the call and said, can you be here on Saturday? And I said, sure. So I packed up, and I think I left Thursday morning, and I drove to like Atlanta, and then stayed overnight. And the next morning I drove down. And mind you, I was a temp. I was a temp at Abbott. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I was less than 6 months graduate. I was about 6 months, a little more, over 6 months after getting my master's. I was a temp. I didn't have a lot of money. So I'm like, I'm driving to Florida. Like, I'm gonna have to get a hotel room, all this gas and tolls and everything, turnpike, all that stuff. So anyway, but I get down there, and they just handed me a check for travel, and they're like, oh yeah, here, this is to reimburse your travel. I was like, well, that's more than I spent. And they were like, it's okay, just take it. And so like right away, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And they told me I was staying at a Holiday Inn in Port St. Lucie, Florida, which is where the Mets headquarters, their minor league headquarters are, and where they have spring training, obviously. So I was staying at the Holiday Inn right on US 1, and I ended up living there literally from like the beginning of March until I guess I was there instructionally too. So I probably lived there until like October, and I was living in a Holiday Inn. But I mean, you should have seen me. I brought cart after cart. I had my car just loaded with crap. I had everything I owned pretty much, because I think I was living with Weagle then, so I had to bring everything I owned with me, because someone else was. So yeah, so that was Friday night. I got there, I got checked into the hotel, and then Saturday morning I follow my GPS. I had no idea where I was going, and I show up at the time it was called Tradition Field, I think, and it's something different now. But so the Mets have this complex down there, and they've got 7 fields. One of them is the big stadium. They've got 4 full-size fields, and then they've got like I think it called the 6-pack. It was like 6 pitchers mounds, and they had the 10-pack, and they had a bunch of pitchers mounds, and all the spring training pitchers and catchers would rotate in there and throw their bullpen sessions. And if you had guys rehabbing, they'd be throwing there. Anyway, they had batting cages, of course. They have this really cool machine. And for people who are a bunch of my friends are in baseball or were in baseball, but something really cool that not everybody knows is they have these like pitching machines, and it's like a video screen, so you can pick which pitcher. And then, like, the computer has all these parameters. You can say, I want to throw me, this guy's pitches, and they can throw, pitches of different speeds and different rotations. And it's really cool for these hitters to go face, like, it's a TV screen, but you're facing a pitcher, real pitches. So anyway, they got all kinds of cool stuff down there. They have a field that's just used for pitchers fielding, or for pitchers to get over to first base. You see it all the time, even in the big leagues. If a pitcher is lazy or he just doesn't anticipate something, he doesn't get over there in time. And I'm not a coach by any means. I was a medical guy. I was an athletic, I don't know the ins and outs of baseball strategy. I was just a medical guy, but it was cool to see all this stuff. And I saw earlier, someone watching right now is Steve Brockway. He was actually a clubhouse attendant, clubby, with the Mets down there. I mean, he was one of my first friends working down there. So, you're talking spring training, man, they are long days for the staff, for the players, at least for the players who are set with a roster spot. Spring training is a piece of cake. You show up, take your practice, batting practice, take infield, maybe playing a game. If you don't feel like traveling, you don't always have to travel. You're staying at these ridiculous, like PGA resorts, like golf course resorts and nice hotels. For guys who are fighting for a roster spot, and don't get me wrong, it's not, these guys don't take it lightly. They're putting in work. They're sweating all day long. But for staff members, we would get there oftentimes before, 5:30 in the morning. And, we'd be out there getting the field set up with our medical supplies, and water and Gatorade and ice towels and everything, before the sun even comes up. Then you have breakfast, and then you have morning meetings. We would go over the injury report, which in spring training, you've got, like 7 teams full of minor leaguers there. So you could have well over 200 players, and you got to go through each guy, what injuries they might be fighting, what we're doing to try, their rehab plan and their progression back to return to play. But anyway, so they were long days. We'd often get out of there, 8 or 9 o'clock at night sometimes. And, then you got to go home, get some sleep, and do it again the next day, and do that for, 5 or 6 weeks. So there were some long days. And for staff members, we were, you were looking forward to breaking camp, and because we knew where we were going. Obviously the players were in groups for certain teams, and they were trying to fight to make that roster. So they had an idea of where they were going, but sometimes they would be surprised at the end. But for us, like, I knew my first year I was going to be in Gulf Coast, so I stayed in Port St. Lucie for the whole summer. And then they have what's called instructional league, and that's at the end of the minor league season. They ask, like, the prospects, the minor league kids who are highly touted. They think these kids have a chance, fine tuning and a little extra time, maybe they can make it. So, and not, this percentage is so small of everybody who plays, high school and college baseball, just to make it to be signed to a team. But in that, it's a ridiculously small percent of actually people who make it to the big leagues. So, these guys are fighting their butts off, and they're working so hard. It was really cool to see the inner workings of that. But so instructionally, they invite these kids to come stay. They obviously need medical staff, to hang out and get them ready, get them stretched, get them warm, and be there for their games and their practices. So that was another couple weeks after the season ended. And then something really cool that they do, which, the average person doesn't really know, is fantasy camp. And it was usually, I think it was January for the Mets. I'm sure it was probably about the same time for all the teams that do it. But what they do is these, rich lawyers or record executives. I'm trying to think of the guys who came. They were usually like lawyers or record executives, but they would pay all this money to come play, baseball. They would pretty much have like a spring training in January, Florida, which it was always nice. I mean, it was a little chilly, but it was still nice in Florida. But they would get to play with like old Mets legends. So, you have all these big names from the Mets who used to come down, and these guys would get coached by their idols pretty much. And they get to play with people that they grew up watching, the 86 Mets. And, these big shots from New York, these rich guys would come down and play baseball with these idols for 2 weeks. And the staff, it was awesome. If we got invited to work fantasy camp, the money was great. Our salaries were not anything special really, but the perks were nice. They used to give us allowance every month to fly our families out. So for, some of the older coaches to fly their wife and kids or whatever. For me, I just had Amy. So I would fly Amy out to see me. We would usually try to do it, like that first year was just Florida. But then after that, like we try to pick out, we'd look at the schedule and see when she could take off. And we would see when or where I was going to be and if she wanted to come visit me there. So she would fly out on the road and see me. She came out to Georgia when we were playing the Braves. She came to Cleveland when we were playing the Indians. She flew to Jersey when we were playing the Phillies. And Lexington, I think that was the Astros team back then. I think Roger Clemens' son was playing there when she came up. But anyway, so we would always figure out a place and time for her to come see me, and we tried to get her out every month. Sometimes it didn't work out that way, but it was cool that the Mets covered her travel fees, to get out and see me. So that was nice. And so yeah, first year was Gulf Coast. Second year I was in Kingsport, Tennessee, and this is funny because we were getting married in September of 2005, and I was in Kingsport that summer leading up to that September, and we were pretty bad. Our team wasn't all that. We had some great names on that team. Actually, Mike Piazza's little brother was on that team, and he was a class act. I love Tommy. He was a great guy. But as we were getting towards the end of the season, we were actually in the playoff hunt. Believe it or not, like for whatever reason, after not playing so great all season, but right towards the end, we were in the playoff hunt. And Amy was like, "So what does that mean if you guys make the playoffs?" And she's like, "Are you going to be late?" And I was like, I really don't know. I said, like, I asked my boss, I was like, "Hey, if we make the playoffs, I'm going to miss my wedding. And I really don't think my wife would appreciate that." And so he was like, "Don't worry, man." He's like, "If you guys make the playoffs, I'll come out and cover for you." I was like, "Oh, thank God." But we didn't make it anyway. So I ended up being able to travel home when I needed to. And we had my bachelor party. I think bachelor party was like Friday night. And I think we got married on, right?
Yeah,
maybe, yeah. It was fast.
It was close. Yeah, we were.
But yeah, so that was 2005, Kingsport, Tennessee, and then Amy and I went to Hawaii for our honeymoon, and that was awesome. That was one of the best experiences, one of the best trips. We went to Honolulu for 5 days, and then we were in Maui for like 10 days. It was awesome. Like, I'll never forget the honeymoon. We did all the touristy crap. We did the submarine. We did
Right. That's what you do when you're.
Yeah. You got to take it. And Amy, she loves chickens and penguins, and even the Pi Thetas, their logo they were penguins at Carthage, and we met in school. And so, but anyway, she loves penguins. So we get to the Hilton Hawaiian Village on Oahu, and there's penguins just walking around the lobby, and she was like, I was like, "We're in Hawaii, and there's friggin' penguins walking around. Who knew?" But so that was kind of cool. But so then that was 2005, and then 2006. I was kind of bummed because 2006, I was supposed to be in Brooklyn. They had told me I was going to go to Brooklyn. And it was the Mets.
06 was the Subway Series, right? Wasn't that the Mets and Yankees in the
no, 06 was when the Mets hit the Cardinals in the NLCS, and the Cardinals won in Game 7.
Okay.
When I don't know when the Subway Series was. It was like 01, I think.
Was it earlier? I don't remember.
I wasn't a Mets fan. I was always a Cubs fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really know when the Subway Series was.
I'm sure somebody will look it up and tell us.
So it was funny. I was supposed to be in Brooklyn, and it was the Mets rookie ball league. And I still would have been in Florida for half the summer. I wouldn't have gone to Brooklyn until like the beginning of June. Or maybe end of May. But I was excited because my dad, with his hockey contacts, he was talking about having a place for me to stay, like in Manhattan. And I was like, how cool would that be? Like, living in Manhattan for the summer? Like, this is so cool. And well, then right before spring training started, they shifted things around, and they were sending me to Hagerstown, Maryland. And technically it was a promotion because I was in full season A ball then. So I was moving my way up the ladder. But for me, it wasn't a promotion. Brooklyn for the Mets, that's like when the Mets are out of town, Mets fans go to Brooklyn. And
right.
For the players, if they don't need to go to rehab, if they don't need to go to the minor league complex for physical therapy and rehab, and when I say rehab, it's not drugs, it's physical.
Yeah.
So they're going down to Florida. If they don't need to go to Florida, they would go to Brooklyn. And so you'd see, big league players play, and they'd pay $9 for a ticket, instead of, $900 at Chase Stadium back then. I guess now it's Citi Field. But so anyway, I was all excited to go to Brooklyn. Didn't happen. I went to Hagerstown. And no offense to anybody in Hagerstown, but I didn't have a good time there. If one were to ask me, I'd be like, Hagerstown's like the armpit of America. Like, there really wasn't anything to do. There was nothing fun. The coolest thing that was there was, I don't want to pronounce it wrong. I think it's Appomattox or Antietam. Antietam was the Civil War battlefield, 20 minutes away. A Civil War battlefield was the coolest thing in that area. So to me, that speaks volumes.
Right.
But it was because I didn't think so highly of Hagerstown. And again, no offense intended. I just mean there wasn't a lot to do there for someone who's only there for 4 or 5 months. But instead of flying Amy to Hagerstown, that's when we hit all those different cities. It was really cool to fly her out and see a bunch of places. I think I flew her out to Hickory, North Carolina. Yeah. So anyway, a bunch of different cities. It was always great to see her on the road, and it would always suck. Like, after the game, I know she's waiting for me, and I still got to do my job. I have to do my injury reports.
Right,
And
right. Yeah, see.
yeah, you never want anybody to get hurt. These guys most of these players were great people, and we were kind of trenches together with these long, hot seasons. Especially in the South Atlantic League. In the summer. And once we got to Savannah in 07, the team name back then was the Savannah Sandnets. This is before the Savannah Bananas, which are, all the rage now.
Mm-hmm.
But the Savannah Sandnets were playing down there at Grayson Stadium. And that wasn't just a funny name. There were sand gnats everywhere. And like these things would come out of the ground at night, and they were so tiny, it's a gnat. You could barely see it. And they would just chew on your skin. And I mean, it's worse than mosquitoes. Like, we have mosquitoes in the Midwest, but those gnats down there, man, I have scars on my legs because even like weeks after they bit you, they were still itchy. So anyway, but it was cool living in Savannah. I was there at 07 and 08. And the first year I lived on Wilmington Island, which is right between Savannah and Tybee Island. Tybee Island was this, it's a famous destination down there. It's just south of Hilton Head. It's a popular area to hit. They got, bars, restaurants. They got open air restaurants and bars right there on the beach. It's really cool and a nice evening.
Awesome.
And so, but also something famous about Tybee Island, which I didn't know this until I came home in 07. So I was out there all summer. And then I moved home, September, I guess, middle of September, I came home. And I was just in our house in Waukegan back then. And I was watching like History Channel, and it was Modern Marvels, or no, what are those two guys?
Mythbusters.
Yeah. And they were testing this, they were testing the ground by Tybee Beach. They were putting these poles, like ground-based radar or ground-penetrating radar, and they were putting these poles in the silt, and they were searching for a hydrogen bomb that had been missing from the U.S. military since like the 50s or 60s. Some plane carrying a nuclear bomb. I don't know where it was headed or why it had it, but it had been in a midair collision during a storm, somewhere down, I don't know, I don't want to say this, Fort Collins or whatever the airfield is, Hunter Army Airfield, I think it is down there in Savannah. And so it had made a collision, and the plane was going to crash, and the pilot jettisoned the nuclear bomb or the hydrogen bomb just off the coast of Tybee Island. So this bomb went into the silt, and out there they said, it could be buried in 10 feet of mud and sand. It's right at the mouth of the Savannah River. So, you've got a lot of current there. Things are constantly being washed away and buried and everything. So they said, there were rumors that a Russian submarine had come to shore and that they had dug it up. And then they had the U.S. Navy was there trying to search for it. And so, but anyway, they were like, as far as we know, it's never been found. And so I was like, holy crap. So an undetonated hydrogen bomb was buried in the beach that I went to probably 30 times last summer. Living at Wilmington Island, I mean, it was a 15-minute drive, if that. It was probably a 10-minute drive. Just head over some bridges and we were there. And my roommate Pete and I think Pete's still in baseball. Last I heard, he was the clubhouse attendant for the Hickory Crawdads. They used to be the Pirates minor league team, but I don't know who they are now. But anyway, Pete and I would go to the beach all the time, and we didn't have to be at the stadium sometimes until noon or 1. So we could go to the beach at 9:30 or 10 in the morning and get 2 good hours, just read a book and enjoy some swimming. I don't know. It was a perfect spot. So then at the end of 2007, I moved back home, and then 2008 I was back in Savannah again, and I had a new roommate, Nick, who was a great guy too. He was a strength coach with the Clippers or the Kings, Sacramento Kings. But anyway, he was actually from Japan, and at the end of the season he moved back to Japan. But it was a fun time. I enjoyed living with Nick, and I had a great time living with Pete too. We would play tennis, but neither of us were very good. So we invented it. We called it arena tennis. And so we would just play tennis, but nothing was out. You had to keep playing it until that ball stopped bouncing. So like, it was a great workout back then, especially you're in Savannah in July. Like, it was hot as anything you can imagine. It was so hot down there. But we're trying to play tennis at 10 in the morning, and arena tennis where no ball is out of bounds, and we would try to keep it in the lines, but we weren't very good, so the ball could go anywhere, and we'd just be chasing after it, trying to hit it and then get back into position. We had a lot of and we had a weight room at the stadium. It was nothing special. It was a minor league historic stadium. Some of these stadiums had really nice weight rooms, but a lot of the minor league clubs, they have a partnership with like a gym nearby, like maybe a Gold's Gym or maybe just a family-owned gym.
Okay.
So the team, if we were traveling, we would ask the team that we're visiting, what gym can we use around the road? Because these, with minor leagues, it's about development. It's really not about winning. They wanted these guys to develop the right way and see who they could get, promoted to the next level. But yeah, we had a lot of fun stories out there, man. I had one guy, I don't want to say his name because, it's talking about getting treatment, medically. So, but he was a pitcher, a left-handed pitcher, and he was our starter in 2006 in Hagerstown. And I hadn't worked with him at all in spring training. He was healthy. He never needed any work. So I didn't really know anything about him. And he came into the training room as our opening day starter. And I said, hey, what do you need? And he was like, could I just get a heat and a stretch and a massage? And I was like, that's pretty standard for, a starting pitcher. That's pretty standard routine for before a game. So I said, yeah, of course. I slapped a heating pad on his shoulder and his elbow. And then after about, 10 or 15 minutes, I took the heating pads off and I gave him a good stretch, from everywhere, neck, back, shoulder, elbow, wrist, fingers, get everything. Something, pitchers, I mean, the amount of torque that they put on that ball, their forearms and their elbows undergo a lot of stress every time they throw the ball. So I try to make sure that their forearms and wrists were well loosened up and warm before they were throwing. So anyway, gave him a heat stretch and I gave him a good massage. And then he's sitting there on the table and he's moving his arm. And I was like, how'd that feel? He was like, it felt great. And I was like, all right, well, go get him. He's like, only problem is I'm a lefty. And I was like, come on, dude, why didn't you tell me? And I was like, I don't know anything about you. And he goes, I don't know, it felt good. Why would I stop you? So we had to start all over again with his left arm. And then I'll never forget that. It was so funny. But anyway, he went on. He was a big leaguer for a couple of years, a couple of different teams. He made some good money for himself. It was fun to work with him before he was a big name.
Yeah. So getting onto that subject, who would you say is the biggest name you've worked with in
it was prime pickings for that Mets era back then. I worked with Jose Reyes and David Wright. That first year when Mike Piazza was there, I never really got to work with him. I was a first-year minor league trainer. I didn't have much time over there. Now, eventually, they implemented this thing in spring training where each minor league trainer would get like a week with the big league club. So that was really cool because, first of all, you're in the big leagues for a week. So, you had people who were carrying your bags to these road games. They were carrying all your stuff. All you had to do was walk in and your stuff was set up. It was really cool. And get to see, the other big league parks in Florida. We would go to Jupiter, Florida, where the Marlins and the Cardinals played back then. And we went to Fort Myers where the Red Sox were playing, and Tampa where the Yankees were playing. And it was pretty cool. We'd go up to Vero Beach. I got to go to Dodger Town a few times. I saw Tommy Lasorda more than once. That was really cool. Even though I wasn't a huge baseball guy growing up, like who doesn't know Tommy?
Right.
He was on the so yeah, it was cool. Like I said, I met Piazza. I met Billy Wagner. I met Carlos Beltran. We had a little history with Beltran. I can tell this story. He was he had knee problems throughout his career. That's not a secret. So he was in the training room getting his knee worked on. I wasn't actually working with him. I was working on someone else. And someone had heard a rumor that I had put, they have this balm. It goes up in heat levels, and there's cream and music, which is easy. You can put that anywhere. You can put that in your mouth. You'd be fine. I wouldn't recommend it, and then you have atomic balm, BALM, atomic balm, and that'll light you up pretty good. You put a heating pad on you and a sweatshirt, like your arm's going to be on fire pretty good. And then there's red hot, which is the worst thing ever invented by man. Some could argue, weapons, that might be a bad thing, but red hot is among the worst. And I want to say it was atomic balm that I had taken $50, actually from that same pitcher that told me he was a lefty. He bet me $50 that I wouldn't put that on a certain part of my anatomy that only guys have. So I ended up putting that on, and sure enough, man, dude, like 3 minutes later, I ran to the shower. I had tears coming out of my eyes. And unfortunately, I didn't know at the time, water doesn't really work because that balm is petroleum based. Water doesn't really wash off petroleum products. So I had to, like, dude, like the worst pain. But it was $50, whatever. I was like, oh, I'll never do that again. So we were in, and Carlos Beltran's there, and someone was like, hey, this that trainer that took $50 to put the red hot on, or the atomic bomb on his, his stuff. And Beltran was like, would you do it again? I was like, no. And he goes, you did it for $50 before? I was like, yeah. He goes, how about 200? And I was like, no, I can't do that, man. And actually, what factored into this too is Amy was coming into town, I think that night. And so I will just leave it at that. I didn't want anything to be affecting me anywhere.
Right.
So yeah, he goes, well, how about 500? And I was like, geez, man. I was like, no, no, thank you. I learned my lesson. I'll never do that again. No 500. And he goes, $1,000. And I was like, look, I think you're funny. I don't think you'd actually do this. He's like, I said, but no, I can't do that. And finally he goes, $2,000. And I was like, you're going to give me $2,000 to put this on my, and I was like, how long are we talking? We have to make it through warm-ups. And I was like, warm-ups is 25 minutes. And I was like, $2,000 though, man. And all the guys are like laughing. They're like, dude, they're like, your lady's coming in town, use that $2,000 and buy her something nice. They said, because you're not going to.
Right.
I was like, do you have the $2,000? And here's Beltran making like 20 million a year. He was like, I have $2,000 in my wallet. And I was like, all right, fine. And so he goes, you do it for warm-ups, $2,000 is you. And he's like, but we got to see you put it on. And I was like, all right, that's fair. That's fair. And so I, one or two guys, they confirmed that I put it on, and literally like everyone went outside to warm-ups. I got my trainer kit and I'm walking out, and the way the stadium was set up, you had to walk all the way down like the third base line past left field to get to the practice field. So as I'm walking outside, I open up the door, and I'm inside where it's air conditioned, and it wasn't so bad just yet. And I open up the door, and just boom, I'm hit with this wall of heat and humidity. And immediately certain parts felt it because of that heat, the balm that was on there. And I was just like, ooh, I kind of stopped, and I was like, well, that's not nice at all. And so it was like, all right, you can do this, dude. $2,000 is at stake here. You got this. I didn't even make it to the practice field. Like, I'm talking, it was the worst pain. And I've broken so many. I wrestled growing up. I played football, water polo. I broke bones all the time. And my mom, I'm sure, like, she knew the ER people on a first name basis because I was there getting my fingers, casted or whatever. But so yeah, I was like, this is the worst freaking pain. I can't do it. And I can take pain, dude. I skied on a broken leg once. I didn't know it was broken at the time, but I skied on a broken leg. And so I turn around, and I'm like jogging back to the training room, or, back into the clubhouse, just trying to get the hell out of that humidity. I get inside, and I'm like shutting off my clothes as I'm running to the shower. I grab some alcohol wipes on my way, and I'm in the shower just scrubbing away. And luckily this time, like, there was nobody there laughing at me. Like, I was able to just, suffer in silence. But yeah, I cleaned it all off, and I got dressed again, and I went back out to the practice field, and the guys were there going like, where were you? And I was like, I didn't make it. And then what was it? Cliff Floyd. I think it was Cliff Floyd. He was a big outfielder for the Mets. But he goes, well, how long did you do it for? And I was like, honestly, from the time I put it on to the time I got out there, to the time I came back in the shower, I probably had it on for 6 minutes, and which like doubled the time I had it on the previous attempt. So I was like, yeah, probably 6 minutes. And he goes, hey, Carlos, he was talking to Beltran. He said, the guy made it for 6 minutes. He's like, that's like a quarter of what you were going to pay him. Just give him $500. And Beltran was like, no. He said it was $2,000 for warm.
Or nothing.
And I was like, you jerk. But I mean, he wasn't. But yeah, I didn't get $1 for my efforts. But that was pretty funny. Never again, though. How much money it is, I can't. It cannot be done, man. I don't care what they say. I know there was Roger Clemens would put it on certain parts of his anatomy to get him fired up and like want to get off the mound quicker and get the game over. I don't know if that's true. I don't know how he did it, if it is true, but it's not for me. I couldn't do it again.
That's a tough one to do for sure. I'd imagine that the pain level is probably high, but then the mental anguish of,
you try to isolate. Anytime you have pain, if you have a sore ankle, if your back's hurting you, we're getting old. Like we're mid 40s now. I'm 44 years old. You have back pain in the morning. If you sleep 1 degree off. But you try to isolate it, and you try to compartmentalize your pain and try to push it down. And most of the time, I think adults, by the time you've reached this point in life, you can usually, but yeah, that one was, I couldn't push it out. It was just, it kept hammering its way through my blockade. And yeah, it was, that one hurt. But yeah, anyway, a lot of cool experiences down there. The Dominican trip, that was interesting. The Mets have a big complex down there in Boca Chica, Dominican Republic, and it's, the Mets are known for cultivating young talent in the Latin countries, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and there's even like I think they have Latino night in New York, or I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but they have jerseys that say Los Mets because they take pride in their Latino and the players that they have. So anyway, it was considered an honor if they asked you to go down there and work. And like in 2007, I was kind of bummed that they didn't ask me because I heard the guys that went had a great time. And so then in 2008, when they asked me to go, I was like, man, this is so cool. Hell yeah, I'm in. And like they had this like private bungalow that they put the staff up in. They had these nice brand new modern apartments for the players. And so I was in this bungalow and, I get all checked in and, I got my ride to the complex. I put away all my medical stuff and my uniforms and stuff like that. And I get to this bungalow and I walk in and dude, it looked like someone had been murdered in the bathroom. Like it looked like, I'm sure it was just rust, but it looked like the bathroom from Desperado. And I was like, is awful, man. And I was like, this kind of sucks. Like, I mean, this is an awesome location. It's gorgeous. But I was like, this is not a place I want to live ever. And so like my bed, like the sheets were okay, but I didn't trust the bed. There were spiders in the room. And I know that down there, they've got a plethora of poisonous spiders. And next story. So once I got all checked in, this is my first night there. I'm in the coach's locker room or the coach's office because they had a computer that I could call Amy, or one of those phones that I could call Amy. So I called her and said, hey, I'm here. It's okay. It's a cool complex. I haven't even seen all of it yet, but I said, it's pretty cool. So anyway, I said, I'm here. Have a great night. Love you. Miss you. But hung up. And I opened the door. I'm leaving. I was going to go grab some dinner. They had a cafeteria on site. And I opened the door and there's this tarantula on the floor. I've never seen one in real life, aside from like the zoo. Dude, this thing, it was like the size of a face hugger from Aliens. Like it was with its legs, it was probably 8 inches across. It was the biggest freaking spider I've ever seen in my life. And the thing is just standing there right in the middle of the doorway. And I was like, is that jump at me? Is it going to spit at me? Is it going to paralyze? I don't know what these things are capable of doing. I said, I'm not like afraid of things, but that was a new encounter for me. And I was like,
you don't want to mess with it.
Step on this. Can it chew through my rubber sole? I don't know what this thing is capable of. It's huge. And I look up and there was this guard standing there. He's got this chrome plated shotgun over his shoulder. And it's a big cowboy hat. It was fresh out of a movie. And he's just kind of smiling at me. I was like, kill this thing? I speak Spanish well enough. I got by down there. And I was like, are you going to kill this thing? And he kind of smiled and he came over and stepped on it. And this thing it was like bone crunching sounds when he stepped on it. It was like, I was like, you just, and he just kicked it into like a gutter, like a ring. And I had every time I walked by the rest of that trip, I was like, there's that freaking spider that greeted me, my first friend. And anyway, like the shotgun, I was like, hey, because they had this 8-foot wall surrounding the complex. And on the other side of it was a jungle, pretty much. I mean, it was undeveloped land in the Dominican Republic. It was a jungle. And I said, I was like, what's the shotgun for, animals or people? And he said, both. And I was like, Jesus, all right, this is gonna be a fun trip. But like I said, with the bungalow, I found out later they had a nice pool there. Our days were pretty short there. They weren't nowhere near as long. Like I said, it was a pretty cush gig down there. I liked it. I'd get out of there with plenty of time to explore. If I wanted to take a cab to the beach or the local town or whatever, that I could do that. So one day I went to the pool at the bungalow. Dude, I get in there. I'm not even in the pool yet. I just had my swim trunks and my towel, and I'm just kind of walking around, and I hear like a buzzing. And again, like this place is like in the middle of the jungle, pretty much. And yeah, it was kind of modernized, some of it was, but I was like, what is that buzzing? I was like, I swear you could feel it in the ground. And I looked over and there was the biggest freaking beehive I'd ever seen in real life with my own eyes. This beehive was hanging off of a picnic table next to the pool, and it was from the bottom of the picnic table almost down to the ground. And I'm looking at this beehive and it's just loaded with bees. And I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm not trying to get on 1,000.
No part of that.
Rescue 911 Dominican style. So I asked the American players. There were like 3 guys there, maybe a guy from Canada. Ike Davis was down there. I'm trying to think who else was down there when I got there. A couple guys that I knew from being in the minor leagues, in the U.S. They're getting extra time, extra games. Ike ended up making it to the big leagues. I want to say Dan Murphy was down there too at the time, and Dan Murphy made quite a name for himself in the big leagues. He was one of the guys that kind of killed the Cubs back in 2015 in the NLCS, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Murphy, he stuck it to the Cubs pretty good. But anyway, I like Murphy. He was a good guy. He was a little controversial with his religious beliefs, I guess, but as a person, I always liked him. And actually, one of the times the Mets came into town to play the Cubs, Amy and I would always go, the whoever was with the Mets would, throw some tickets at us so we could go hang out and see him for free. And then we'd go out to dinner after the game, and we often go to Giordano's right there by Wrigley Field. And Murph came with us, him and Nick Evans. Nick was a good friend. He came up in the minor leagues with me, and he had a good career in the big leagues for a while as well. But anyway, yeah, Murphy and I were never particularly close. We'd been in spring training together, but I never had him on my team during a season. So it's not like we didn't have that kind of a bond. But anyway, when dinner was over, and I had some of Amy's family there, I think her cousin and her brother might have been there. But yeah, Murphy just threw down, like a couple $100 bills and just picked up the entire tab. And I was like, thanks a lot, man. I mean,
That's a classy move when you're making that kind of money to, because not a lot of people would do that. So that's,
Yeah. No, I felt that was really classy move. And like I said, he and I were not particularly close, but the fact that he was just like, I got lunch, guys, and that was a lot of money for a normal person. Yeah, the fact that he just threw it down, I like that. That was a good move. Yeah, then Nick and I, even long after we went our separate ways and I quit the Mets, he made it to the big leagues with the Mets. And he would leave tickets for me and Amy. And sometimes even if I couldn't go, he would leave tickets for Amy just so she could, because she knew Nick. She went down there with me in the summer of '04. After college ended for her, she and her dad came down. He dropped her off, and she ended up living with me for the summer. That was a lot of fun. She got to meet a lot of the guys. We'd go to the beach together on off days. We'd go to Disney World. Actually, in '05, we went to Disney World with a bunch of the guys. We took a weekend trip to Orlando because Saturdays were like camp days in spring training. You'd have like a half day, and you pretty much just play like an inter squad scrimmage, starting at like 10 in the morning. So you'd be done by 1 or 2, and pretty much have the rest of the day. And then Sundays, at least in extended spring training, Sundays were off. Regular spring training, Sundays were definitely not off. But in an extended spring training for the shorter season clubs, like the rookie ball clubs, we would get Sundays off. And that, kind of explore Florida a little bit, have some fun trips.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then I got to tell you this one story. It was my first year. It was my 1 week with the big league side. And then we were in Tradition Field, and it was this big matchup against the Red Sox. So the Red Sox were in town, and the big names were there. I think they had Big Papi, Pedro, what's the Johnny Damon.
Yeah.
The big names were all there, and this place was completely sold out. And I remember Amy was in town, and I couldn't even get her a ticket to the game. All the tickets, even the club tickets, had been used up because this was like Robert De Niro was there, and these big name like celebrities were there. And so I'm in the dugout for this game. And I want to say it was Glavine. I believe it was Tom Glavine who was pitching. And I didn't know at the time, again, I wasn't a huge baseball guy. I didn't know that Glavine was a hockey player. I think Glavine had been drafted by the Rangers. So I didn't realize, this guy was, tough as hell pretty much. Well, anyway, he's Tom Glavine, for those who don't know, he was a pretty famous pitcher with the Atlanta Braves for many years. And then he ended his career. I don't know if he ended it with the Mets, but he was there towards the end of his career. Well, anyway, I believe it was Glavine. I'm in the dugout, and the next pitcher to come in needed to get ready. So the head trainer, took him back and was working on him. One of the other players had been hurt. They strained something. And so there were 2 big league trainers and me. Well, the one big league trainer was in the training room working on the next pitcher. The second trainer was working on the guy who had just gotten hurt. So I'm the only one covering, and I'm in the dugout, and there's, probably, I don't even know how many thousands of people were at this game, but it was a big game, and, it's televised, and Glavine wore a pitch in the chest. It got away from the pitcher, whoever was pitching for the Sox, it got away from him and hit Glavine in the chest. And so I go, he drops to the dirt, and I go running out there. And my first thought is, Tom Glavine just got hit by a pitch and you're the one who's taking care of him. I mean, granted, I'm going to perform open heart surgery on the guy, but I was like, I'm not ready for this, man. Holy crap. And I get out there, I'm at home plate, and I can just feel these, thousands of people are all watching Tom Glavine and this, fat trainer who's fresh out of college. And so, but I'm out there and the guy's like, did he really just freaking hit me? And I'm like, what can I do for you? What, are you okay? Are you okay? That's pretty much all I'm asking. And he was like, yeah, I'm okay. He's like, just give me a minute. And he stands up and he's kind of stretching his arm out. And he's like, I'm okay. So anyway, that was, it was interesting. And that was my like, get my feet wet moment, baptism by fire. And nothing terrible happened. He was fine, but it was just that moment that I was like, dude, this is real, man. You're out here with like a big league star. And this guy's Tom Glavine. I mean,
I'm sure when he gets up, everybody claps, right? Like they're all cheering for him, because so
walk back, and, try not to trip and fall, or do anything stupid. Yeah, I tell you what, the worst as an athletic trainer, at least in baseball, when a guy gets hurt in the outfield, like a guy jumping at the wall, and then he cracks his ribs or something, or his elbow kind of goes funny over the top of the wall. That is the absolute worst, because you're looking, it's like 365 feet I got to run right now. It's funny because we had another trainer he was like, I'm not running. He's like, unless someone's neck is sliced open and they're spurting arterial spray, I'm not going to run. It's an ankle. It's not going to get any better by the time I run out there. He's like, it'll be fine. And so he would just walk. I mean, sometimes he would walk at a brisk pace, but he was a walker. And then me, like in college, I always kind of learned, like, someone's hurt, you run, you get there as fast as you can, you tend to your player. So if a player went down in the outfield, I was like, damn it, here I go. And I do my, 365-yard run to the outfield. That was always the worst. And then double down on that. It's actually happened in Savannah. Outfielder hit the left field wall, went down. Me and the manager go running out there. And just as we're getting to him, he stands up. He's like, I'm fine. I was like, no, you're not fine. I ran all this way. Lie to me. Tell me you got a headache or something. Make it worth my while. But so that was, I know I'm missing some funny stories here, and I probably got some guys.
No, that's awesome. Because I'm sure, like I said, I told the viewers, I had a lot of people, because they PM me, or they'll send me a message and they're like, tell us about your guest. And I don't want to always give too much away. Like, I don't want to tell them all about it, because I want you to do that. Like, I want my guests to like tell them about themselves and like the funny stories. And I knew that you were number one with just your personality and the way we are. Nice. It was going to be fun no matter what. But then I was like, I'd rather have you tell the story. Like, I can't do it justice. Like, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I nobody did. And I know, but I'm like, the stories are better told by the person who lives them. Yeah. So I just, I really wanted to like boost you up as much as I could, but at the same time, I didn't want to give it all away. So I'm glad, that we did this, and it's crazy. But like I said, we're at 7:50 right now. We started at 6:55. So this seemed like it was like 5 minutes, right? Like we were just, we've been on for a
story here before. I know we're kind of running out of time, but I got one last story that's really cool. And it was in spring training 2008, I think it was. 2007, 2008. And Amy and I, she was in town for spring training, and we went to dinner, and then we hit up the Walmart. And, back then, video games, like you're always looking at what PlayStation games were out. And so we were in the video game section, and there was MLB, I think it was MLB '08, the show, and it had it had David Wright on the cover. And that's what it was, David Wright. And he goes, oh, that's a Met. Do you know that guy? And I was like, yeah, it's David Wright. Like, I've known him since I started. He was a minor leaguer my first year. He got called up. He's been a big league sensation ever since. He's an all-star. Like, yeah, he's a big name. And now he's on the cover of a baseball video game. And she was like, why don't you buy it? And I was like, I already have last year's MLB The Show, and my pro that I created, I wasn't in the Hall of Fame yet. So, I mean, I was well deep into the big leagues, but I had not made the Hall of Fame yet. And I was like, so once I make the Hall of Fame, then I'll buy this game and I'll start a new career. And so after that, we went to this local complex in Port St. Lucie, and it was, where all the people hung out. And there was a bowling alley, laser tag, golf, mini golf, go-karts, all kinds of stuff, arcade, and like a restaurant bar. And so anyway, we go in there, and we're just going to go bowling. We're going to bowl a few games and then call it a night. And so we go in, and this place is packed wall to wall with like high school kids. And we're like, what is going on here? And as we're making our way through, like we could see the names on the jackets and the coats, and like it was a high school baseball tournament. Was it like Indian River or somewhere down there by Port St. Lucie? All these high school baseball players were down there and their families. Well, as we're making our way through the crowd, and I can see, there's bowling alleys open. So I was like, we just got to get through this group of people. I don't know what they're all waiting for. Well, as we're pushing our way through, we see David Wright is there. And David Wright's there with his AAA roommate, who was still in AAA at the time. He was a catcher. But the two of them are together, and these people are just mobbing David Wright and trying to get his autograph and stuff. And he sees me pulling Amy through the crowd, and they all call me Big Sexy. That was my nickname back then. And he was like, Sexy. And he's waving over. He's like, come on. And so I showed up, and he goes, he said something like, is this your girlfriend? I was like, no, it's my wife. I don't have a girlfriend, David. And so he starts laughing. He's like, Ian Hippus, we got a lane. You guys want to join us? And I was like, sure. We came here to bowl. So he's like, hey, they're with us. And so, we told them our shoe size. They brought us our bowl shoes, whatever, grabbed some balls. Well, Amy was wearing, it was Florida. She was wearing a very small outfit, and she wasn't prepared to go bowling in front of, hundreds of people. And so she's got this little skirt on, and she's like, Matt, I can't bowl. I can't like bend over and roll the ball with all these people behind me. And at that time, we had a running tally. We would bowl in Waukegan at Bertrand Lanes, and we kept running tally. She always beat me, but so this game, she goes, no, this game doesn't count. I was like, this sure does count. I was like, we're going to bowl as many games as we can. Right. I said, I don't care. And I ended up beating her because she couldn't bend over and bowl. I felt bad for her, but so anyway, but she was like, is that the guy in the video game? And I was like, yeah, that's David Wright. She's like, I'm bowling with a guy who's on a video game cover. She's like, this is so cool. She called her dad, who was a huge Cubs fan, and I hear her. She's like, yeah, we're bowling with David Wright right now. And she's like, yeah, David Wright. No, I'm not lying. And so like her dad, this huge, he couldn't believe it. And years later, he and I became good friends. He's the best father-in-law. We have a good relationship. But anyway, so that was our bowling story. We got to bowl with David Wright, and in front of, hundreds of people were watching us. It was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. And a fun fact too about David Wright, I know you're a Barstool sports guy, but they said that David Wright he's number 5 of the top 5 Mets of all time. So I think it's Tom Seaver. It was, I think, Piazza, Gary Carter, and there was somebody else in there, and then David Wright. So
nice.
Of all the Mets that I've ever played, he's top 5. So
John Franco was probably up there.
Yeah, I think Keith Hernandez was somewhere on that. It was a weird list. It was like, I think Seaver was number 1, and I want to say Piazza was number 2, and then I think there was, I want to say it was like Gary Carter, somebody else was up there, but David Wright was number 5.
Nice.
So
yeah, he was a great dude too. And when my older brother passed away just before spring training in 2007, and my dad, obviously, my dad losing a son, he was pretty roughed up about it. And Jennifer just asked, did I get the game with David Wright on the cover? No, I don't think I ever did. I really think I did, but I should have, I guess. But so Amy, what was I going to say? What was I just talking about?
Brother passing away.
Oh yeah, Greg passed away, and it was very fast, and it all happened so fast. I was in San Diego for a conference for athletic training, and Greg's job was in that industry still, even though he wasn't with the Ducks anymore. But he was in the athletic training industry. He worked for Sport Farm. But anyway, they worked with all the big teams, and so he was in San Diego. I was in San Diego, and normally his company would take me and my colleagues out for dinner, and dinner and drinks. And Greg never drank. I don't even think he ate meat. I think he was a vegetarian. I know he never smoked. He played soccer. He ran. And so anyway, he was very healthy. And that trip, he said that he wasn't feeling so well. And so he said, maybe tomorrow. He's like, I've been traveling a lot. I just need a night. And I was like, okay. So he went home with his wife and daughter and, had a night. And then the next night I was like, hey, we going out tonight? And he's like, no, my stomach's really killing me, man. I think I'm just going to stay home. And I said, okay. And so the next night was kind of the same thing. He was like, I'm really sorry. I got to go see a doctor. I think I probably got an ulcer or something. He's like, I'll see you next month in spring training in Florida. We'll go out then. I said, okay. Well, Greg died like 2 weeks after that. It was rapid. He was very fast, and it was quick. So anyway, I know that, when I ended up going to spring training a little later that year, my boss obviously knew Greg, and he was like, Sexy, take as much time as you need, man. Just come on down whenever you're ready. And he even said, he goes, if you don't even want to come to spring training, you can meet at your club when they start. That's fine. But I was like, nah, give me a few days. We flew to LA for the funeral. And then, I ended up making my way down to Florida eventually. But, so anyway, my dad, I went to David. I was never an autograph kind of guy. I never was into that stuff. So I know we got to hurry here.
No.
Anyway, I said, David, my dad, we just lost my brother, and I was just wondering, would you mind signing a ball for my dad? I'm not going to go sell it. You can write, to Skip. And he was like, sure, man, anything. He's like, I'm so sorry. So I got him to sign a ball for him, and yeah, it was classy. I like that he did that for my dad. My dad's, to my knowledge, he still has it in one of those cases on display at his house. So
yeah,
it was cool. Just it's just every little thing kind of can cheer you up, or it's amazing how a little thing can do that.
Right.
So
But anyways, you've been an awesome guest. So what we're gonna do is, I think we're gonna need a part 2 to this, because we didn't even touch on like our college career. We didn't even talk about your dad, because I mean, he's famous in his own right. So I mean, as far as that goes, we got a ton of stuff to talk about him. He our families are so close. I feel like I've known him forever. So what we'll do is we'll end the broadcast now. So I'll just thank everybody for hopping on, being part of the One Fun Guy podcast. Matt, thanks for being a guest. Again, like and share the video if you could do that. Matt, I will have you on again. Well, down the road, I think there's a bunch of people who are on in between, but a couple months down the road, we'll get you back on, and we'll do a part 2 or even a part 3, because we didn't even scratch the surface. So
we got a lot to cover. But hey, it was fun, and thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. It was an awesome guest. We'll do this again for sure. But thank you guys all for watching the One Fun Guy podcast. Like and share the video. We appreciate it. We're going to wrap it up now. And Matt, thanks again.
Thanks, Marco. See
you later.
Bye.